sure everyone around here could echo that same recognition. So at this time, I'd like to recognize Board President Gloria Goldman for her years of service to the district.
Thank you.
For her years of service. Mr. Lehighton for his years of service. And I know Mr. Krause is at a business function this evening, but I know he did have something that I believe he just wanted to let everyone know that he is very, supportive and glad to be able to be part of this process for many years as well. So, Mr. Gibbons.
I just want to thank Mr. Cleaver too on behalf of myself and how much he's done for our district too. Without him, we would have never put our vision in place and all the things that we've been able to accomplish. So, much appreciated. Courtesy of the floor for agenda items, Mrs. Durst. Ms. Durst, reorganization.
I want to speak regarding the impending organization to the incoming board members. As a member of this board, your first responsibility is to the students of this district. Some of you have announced agendas that have nothing to do with education. So it is imperative that as a board, we elect a president that parents know will work professionally with administrators to continue providing the education our children need. Mrs. Mahalik, this is not a simple affair. Parents will be watching your actions like hawks, and all of your actions will be shared with the public. We all know those actions have profound consequences on those around you, and we hope when the time comes, you can look your granddaughter in the eye and justify what you have done. But luckily, you can still change your mind in the nick of time. Mr. Belts, you have denounced Mr. Bradley to our board. Your claims of corruption have always been at the fringe of your time here on the board. And yet, when questioned directly about those claims, you have remained silent, with no actual accusations being brought forward. Perhaps your ideas of corruption are just like your ideas of the mint juleps. Now is the time to vote for a president that is here for education. The reason you all should be here. If you fail to agree on a president that has proven they are here for the students, you have failed every family in this district and every member of this community. Thank you.
Thank you. That I have no more courtesy of the floor, and I believe we turn it over to Mr. Schwab.
Yes, and I'm going to ask the recording secretary to add the names as I read them from the certificate of election to the list of school directors with the 3 holdovers. Certificate of election, we, the undersigned Carbon County Board of Elections, hereby certify that after tabulating the votes cast at the November 7, 2017 municipal election, it appears that Larry Eastern was duly elected to the office of school director, 2-year term in the Lehighton area school district, signed by the Carbon County Board of Elections, attested by Lisa Dart, Bureau of Elections. Second certificate of election, we, the undersigned Carbon County Board of Elections, hereby certify that after tabulating the votes cast at the November 7, 2017 municipal election, it appears that Joy Mears was duly elected to the office of school director, 4-year term in the Lehighton area school district, signed by the 3 members of the Carbon County Board of Elections, attested by Lisa Dart, Bureau of Elections. Another certificate of election, we, the undersigned Carbon County Board of Elections, hereby certify that after tabulating the votes cast at the November 7, 2017 municipal election, it appears that David F. Bradley Sr. was duly elected to the office of school director, 4-year term in the Lehighton area school district, signed by the Carbon County Board of Elections, attested by Lisa Dart. Next certificate of election, we, the undersigned Carbon County Board of Elections, hereby certify that after tabulating the votes cast at the November 7, 2017 municipal election, it appears that Stephen L. Holland was duly elected to the office of school director, 4-year term in the Lehighton area school district, signed by the Carbon County Board of Elections, attested by Lisa Dark, Bureau of Elections. And the last certificate of election that was turned in, and I'll explain the significance of this, even though it was alphabetical order how I read them. We, the undersigned Carbon County Board of Elections, hereby certify that after tabulating the votes cast at the November 7, 2017 municipal election, it appears that Gail Mahalik was duly elected to the office of School Director, 4-year term in the Lehighton Area School District, signed by the Carbon County Board of Elections, attested by Lisa Dart. Mrs. Mahalik was also elected to the 2-year term, but she only turned in the certificate for the 4-year term, and she can't serve, so there is a vacancy on the board at this point. And that's the certificate of elections. It would be now prudent to give the oath of office for any board members that have not taken the oath.
All right, and that would be Stephen Holland and Larry Stern. I received the oath of office from Joy Beers, David Bradley, and Gail Mahalik. Want to come up front, please? Bill, would you like to answer that? Sure, absolutely, you can. Do you want yours to read? Or you have yours? You have a copy? No. Okay. See? Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. Do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States and Constitution of this Commonwealth, and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity. Congratulations. And now, yes, you will need to sign them, and then I will notarize them for you. Good luck.
The new board members should then be seated.
Joanne, all your stuff here. Or you can move it up there too, that's fine. I have Gail's stuff here, I have Dave's stuff here. So.
Ms. Wagner, please roll call.
Ms. Joy Beers? Here. Mr. Richard Belts?
Here.
Mr. David F. Bradley Sr.?
Here.
Mr. Stephen L. Holland?
Here.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik?
Here.
Mr. Larry Stern?
Here.
Mr. Wayne Wentz?
Here.
And Mr. Andrew Yetzer. 8 present. 1 vacant.
As current vice president in prior practice, I will now preside over nominations for temporary president. Only holdovers from the previous terms are eligible per School Code 24 PS 4-402.
Like we recognize the nominee, Mr. Andrew Yetzer, board president,
Temporary president.
temporary president.
Any other nominations?
I have a nomination. I'd like to nominate Wayne Wentz.
I'll second Wayne Wentz.
Any further nominations?
I decline.
Okay. You decline, this is just once decline nomination?
Got it.
Point of order, why do nominate Steve Holland, president of this board.
He can't be, he's not a
Temporary
regular.
president. First of all, Mr. Bradley is temporary president, and he cannot be nominated as he was not a current member prior to this election. It's only holdover members that could be nominated for president, or for temporary president.
So who was left?
Rusty.
Trustee and Yancer.
Can I second the motion for Andy?
Sure. There's a motion by Wayne Wentz, seconded by Stephen Holland. First of all, I need a motion to close nominations for temporary board president.
I make a motion to close the nomination.
I will second the motion to close nominations. Vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
It's turned it over. You've closed nominations, it should be by acclamation now, the end. He's the only one nominated.
Okay. With no need to vote, Mr. Yancer will now assume temporary president of the Lehighton Board of Education.
At this point in time. At this point in time, I'll take nominations for president.
I would like to nominate Dave Bradley for president.
I'll decline. Personal reasons like Wayne.
I'd like to nominate Mr. Yancer.
I'll decline at this time.
Okay.
I'd like to nominate Joy Beers.
I'll second that.
Call for any other nominations for president?
I nominate Mr. Stern at this time. We need a second for that.
I'll second.
Okay. Okay, are there any other nominations?
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to close nominations.
No.
You're out.
My mind.
You've done your job.
Very effective.
Just get us through.
Do we have a motion to close nominations?
I'll make a motion to close nominations.
Okay. Do we have a second for that?
Second.
All in favor to close nominations?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is passed. At this time, Ms. Wagner, could we get a roll call vote as we have two candidates?
I'd like to make sure that everybody understands the procedure. Mr. Schwab?
Well, it's this procedure basically, during the roll call, you either will say, do you want to vote for Mr. Stern or Ms. Pierce? It's as simple as that. It's not an aye, yes, or.
Okay. So one motion for both.
Yes, it's an election, it's not a motion as such.
Okay, so it's Ms. Spears and Mr. Stern. Okay. Mr. Richard Belts?
Vote for Ms. Pierce.
Ms. Joy Beers?
Suppose I'll vote for myself.
Mr. David Bradley?
I'll vote for Larry Stern.
Mr. Stephen Holland?
Mr. Stern?
Mrs. Gail Mahalik?
Joy Beers.
Mr. Larry Stern?
Larry Stern.
Mr. Wayne Wentz?
Larry Stern.
And Mr. Andrew Yancer.
Larry Stern.
Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 5, 3. 5 from Mr. Stern and 3 from Ms. Spears.
Now you have that.
Thank you, Mr. Yancer. We'll now call for nominations for
nominate Wayne Wentz for vice president.
I'll nominate Joy Beers.
I entertain any other motions?
I'll nominate Dave Bradley.
I'll make a motion to close nominations.
I'll decline my nomination.
Are there any other nominations? Okay. I'll entertain a motion to close nominations.
I'll make that motion to close.
Thank you. All those in favor? Against? The ayes have it. I will entertain a roll call vote, Mrs. Wagner,
Okay, we will need
for either Wayne Wentz
Mr.
or
West and Ms. Beers.
Ms. Beers.
Okay. Mrs. Joy Beers? Ms. Joy Beers, sorry.
Joy Beers.
Mr. David Bradley?
Joy Beers.
Mr. Stephen Holland?
Mr. Wentz.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik?
Joy Beers.
Mr. Larry Stern?
Mr. Wentz?
Mr. Wayne Wentz?
Myself.
Mr. Andy Anster?
Wayne Wentz.
And Mr. Richard Belts?
Ms. Beers.
Okay, so that's a 4-4 tie. So motion's not carried.
Motion did not carry?
Well, it's not a motion,
No.
doesn't
Yeah,
carry.
exactly.
You didn't elect,
I'm used to that.
you didn't elect
We did not elect the vice president.
the vice president.
I'll make a motion that the board as a whole uses a coin flip to make the decision for us so we can move forward. Anyone want to second that motion?
I'll second it.
Are you okay with that motion?
You
Okay.
have a motion and the board
All right, what are
can
you gonna do?
decide how they wish to reorganize.
Okay.
I mean, if it was a tie election, the election board would do the same thing.
So Mr. Bradley made the motion, and was it Ms. Beers?
Yes.
Made the second, to use a coin flip. How do you want me to say it? Coin flip to make the,
To do an election. I'm absent of coin, but no, I'm get with you.
I don't either, so,
I
okay.
Oh,
If it goes, let's do the motion first.
It's not the biggest nomination, but
Okay.
it's important.
Okay, so, Mr. David Bradley?
Yes, coin flip's great.
Okay. Mr. Stephen Holland?
Yes.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik?
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern?
No.
Mr. Wayne Wentz?
No.
Mr. Andy Anster?
Yes.
Mr. Richard Belts?
Yes.
And Ms. Joy Beers?
Yes.
Okay, so it's 6-2, that motion carried. I'm not flipping it.
I'm the lawyer.
No, I don't know if I can flip a, I don't know if I can flip a nickel. I can probably flip a quarter, but.
First of all, which
Okay,
is
first,
heads,
who's
which
the
is
board
tails?
secretary?
yeah, I think so.
Who chooses?
Which is heads,
And I'm gonna make sure it's
which
not
is
double.
tails?
You can-
Do they have a choice?
Okay.
I mean, between, whose heads is it?
Who's heads, who's tails?
But Wentz is tails because he has 5 letters in his name and so does tails.
Yes.
Well, let's make sure we have it there, who's what.
So who's who?
Yours is heads, Wentz is tails.
Are they okay
Is
with
that agreeable with the whole board?
Are you sure?
Just so the minutes reflect it.
Hopefully I don't drop it.
Tails. Well, no, you still have to, well, yeah, there are some other appointments the board makes. You have to now, I guess, to get to J, but A and D is a board vote.
Okay, at this time,
There should be one for the, listen, there should be one for the vacancy. But that has to be here. You gotta handle that under new business. Yes.
okay. At this point in time, we will move on the agenda. I'm passing on nominating committees at this point, and we'll move on to item A.
And just so it's clear, based on past practice of the district, if you're a sitting board member on a committee, you remain on that committee until new appointments are made. You're on finance, so it's all, it doesn't change until January.
Yes, that would be a great idea. As now, as board members, you do see the number of committees that are open for availability. And we're most interested in nominating folks that have a potential and a need and a want to learn more and participate in those different committees. So I'll entertain letters of interest for the committees and appoint them at a later date.
We should still have our regular committee meetings as well.
Committees are outstanding.
I was on negotiations as well as all the man on that.
Correct. Yeah, everything's the same as it was prior.
There's no negotiations pending.
Not yet, no.
And that had to be for personnel in some of the time, so that's going to fine as well.
But A is a nomination.
Yes, it was Renee. Looking for nominations at this one time for the Carbon County Career and Technical Institute representative to the Joint Operating Committee. And I will entertain motions for that position. Currently serves as that position. Mr. Vincent? I will nominate Mr. Yancey to retain his position in the CCTI Joint Operation Committee.
Second that motion.
Is there any other interest? Okay,
Close the nominations and
close the nominations. Take a motion to close the nominations.
Moved.
Thank you, Mr. Bells. Second. Thank you, Mr. Wentz. And since Mr. Yancer is the only appointed, thank you for serving and thank you for your continued support of the Department of CCPI. Now, we do need an alternate, and I believe Mr. Holland currently is the alternate. Is that correct?
Yes, he is.
Nominate Mr. Holland.
the new board members should be advised why we're doing this, because when you elect someone to the VOTEX board, you're authorizing them to commit the district to money and approve the VOTEX budget. That's why it has to be election as opposed to the appointment on the other committees.
I'll entertain a motion to close nominations.
No, one second.
Well,
You have nomination.
Wentz nominated by,
by Holland.
right, but we don't have a second.
Okay, I'll second that. Then I'll entertain motions to close nominations for the alternate representative to the Joint Operation Committee, Operating Committee of the Carbon County Career Technical Institute. opposed? Thank you, Mr. Holland.
Should we go back and vote on 13 then? And then do 13?
Since we can do that, thank you very much, Mr. Wells. So we'll go back to item A. All those in favor of Mr. Ensign retaining his position as the Lehighton representative to the Carbon County Career and Technical Institute Joint Operating Committee? Aye. All those opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Mr. Bell. We don't have anything under financial matters?
Let's get in there.
Nothing under personnel, nothing under miscellaneous, nothing under programs. Any old business for discussion? Any new business for discussion?
Mr. President, because there is a vacancy in the board has 30 days in which to fill it since it is reorganized, which would mean you have until January 3rd to fill that position. However, manner in which the board wishes to fill it.
I'll make a motion that we fill that seat with Richard Belts, the next most vote getter in the general election for the same seat that Gail had advocated. Richard Belts, I believe, is here. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Excellent. And he's represented by Mr. Paul Rossi. Is he here?
Yes.
Excellent. I'd like a second to that motion.
I'll second that motion.
Okay?
Wagner, call roll call vote, please.
Okay, so Mr. Brownlee made a motion, seconded by Ms. Mahalik, to appoint Richard Belts. Want me to use the middle initial? D. Richard D. Belts to fill the vacancy.
Typically, a board would have a discussion period before you have a vote, after you have a motion and a second. Are we going to entertain a discussion of this, or have you guys already decided?
Maybe at this point, I'll make a motion to nominate Mr. Dwayne Item, who is actually the next most let-go vote getter in the general election for all seats.
I'll second.
Point of order, you're going to discuss a new motion before we discuss the other
Let's
motion?
put both of them on so we can vote the same way we would for president or vice president.
Typically, that's not how this would go.
No.
However,
Typically,
what, Larry?
there is no typically.
Yes, there is.
No.
There's actually a procedure for dealing with a motion.
The
There's a
board-
procedure for dealing with a motion. You have one motion on the floor. You have a second for that motion.
Sure,
And you have
okay,
discussion.
then we'll revert and we'll vote on that motion first, Mr. Pratt.
Well, you're gonna have a discussion on that motion first, Mr. Chairman. Am I correct, Mr. Schwab?
I'll call roll call.
A board can organize however it wishes and how it wishes to proceed with its meetings. The majority controls, and that's, if the majority say what you're saying, yes. If the majority say no, no. If we get a 4-4, it's,
I understand. I think out of courtesy to the people that are in this room, and the courtesy to the board, and the letter that Larry wrote this afternoon about how the governance of a board should work, we should have a discussion on the vote before you take a roll call vote. And that's just parliamentary procedure, right in Robert's rules. To deviate from that would be an error.
Good. Who would like to speak on behalf of Mr. Ellis? Is that the roll call? Maybe I should ask you, Mr. Bradley, is that proper that each one of the representatives speaks, or do we allow Mr. Ellis to speak his 3 minutes?
Actually, he has an unlimited time, if anyone on this board would like to hear what he has to say. There's not a 3-minute courtesy of the floor during a meeting while you're discussing, much like when the architect comes here and gives a presentation. So, with that being in mind,
I think we'll give him a 3-minute.
I'm talking, Larry, with that being in mind, I think that we as a board should discuss the merits, as you mentioned. Dwayne Idle with a lot of votes, for the most votes that he got on that other seat. If that's the criteria, which I would agree with, getting a lot of votes is important, Mr. Belts obtained almost 30%, I'll take a look at it in a second, of the votes for his seat in comparison to the 12 or 13% I believe Mr. Lehighton got. And that's just one criteria. We have many to discuss.
We have two motions.
Well, if you want to discuss, you can discuss till someone calls the question. That's up to the board.
I believe we just did discuss.
I would personally, pardon me, I would personally like to hear from Richard Belts and his representative to hear his sales pitch.
I don't think we want to hear from his representative. We want to hear from Mr. Belts.
That's fine.
I'm sorry, Larry, I couldn't hear that. You're wrong.
I said I would like to, she heard me just fine, David, so I'm not sure why you didn't, maybe pay attention, that would be fine. I think we'd like to hear from Mr. Belts, not from his representation.
The board can hear from anyone that they so choose. Any board member can hear from anyone that they so choose.
I think as we move forward with this meeting, I think it's understandable that there is a sign of understanding, respect, and courtesy shown for everyone here on the board. I think that's important. We are a district that is in charge of 2,400 students, and I believe we ask them to do the same every time they walk in our doors. And so I continue to ask the same for every individual who walks through these doors as we move forward with these meetings. That is just something I think is important for us to conduct conduct the process, and most importantly, do what's right for kids. Thank you.
When you're talking process, let's just, because some of the board members are new, when vacancies have been filled, this district has used a myriad of ways to fill the position. We've done it essentially as Mr. Bradley suggests. We've had the motion and appointing at the same time. We've had times when the board takes applications and has a special meeting that is devoted solely to interviewing each one. We've done that. That's probably the most common that this board has followed in my 30 years as solicitor.
Actually, Bill, I'll take a point of order on that. The last two appointments you guys did just in a meeting, just like this.
I said that happened, but I said,
You said mostly.
yes,
I'm
in
taking
30
offense to
years, being here, most of the time people have opened it up to the community to see who was out there and was interested. The board got all the resumes, they sat down, and they interviewed. That wasn't the last two, you're right. But that's been what we've done in the past, and it's up to the board how they fill the position.
In the more recent past, I think we had a qualified applicant. Richard, if you please come up and tell us a couple things about your qualifications of an 18-year-old in the district and a taxpayer in the district. I think they're the basic requirements of a school board member, if I'm not mistaken.
I've been in the area for about 68 years.
Just to make sure, you are a resident of the district.
Palmer.
You're a resident of Palmerton?
No,
No, I just want to make sure that's clear.
Mr. Wayne Wentz and I started off at White Corner School. You were there, right? Yeah, two-room schoolhouse, outdoor plumbing. The third grade, we went to Franklin. I thought that was about the biggest thing that ever came along. And about 6 months later, we pulled the head under our desk in case of a bomb. But in the meantime, I have watched what's going on here. I'm a little concerned about the 4 elementary schools that are being sold off. I think a little bit too cheaply. The new elementary school, that was going to come sometime, sooner or later. I was fortunate to spend about 37 years of my career as an airline pilot. It was my duty, my job to make sure we had a team that worked together. Recently, in the last 10 or 11 years, I've been running the Beltsville Airport. And it's not as easy as you think it can be. You're doing probably all the jobs that are out there. Do I have any questions?
Did you bring a lawyer with you?
Oh, yes, there's a lawyer here.
I'd like to hear from him.
All right.
No, I don't want to hear from his representation.
I do.
Well,
I would like to hear from him, thank you.
I'd like to hear it too.
It has to be majority.
Not to hear from an individual that's going to make a presentation for the board.
Why would we need the lawyer to
Yes.
represent him on a part of his own?
You have
Whether he's
5
a lawyer or
votes.
not, whether he's a lawyer or not, doesn't really impact. If he's interested in providing information for a motion that's on the floor, and a board member has interest in that information, it's part of the data collection. I'd like to collect that data.
Mr. Bradley wants it. I believe Ms. Spears has said she wanted it.
It was you.
Yeah, wanted it. Vote on it. Let's see if 5 of you agree to it.
Actually, but you don't need a full majority for collecting information to make a decision. Nor do you need a vote.
How the board runs is a majority decision.
Only when there's a discrepancy associated with a policy. This is not a policy. This is just collecting data prior to making a
This is
decision.
how they run the decision, and that's my
It is
role against
not
your
the
legal
case.
counsel.
That is not the case, Bill. It's not the case, and you know it.
Get your 5 votes.
It's not about getting 5 votes, Bill.
At
This
this
is
point,
information.
order. At this point, it seems like we're not moving in a direction that is benefiting anyone. So
Point of order,
my
you're
choice at this point,
requesting
Mr. Brown, you're out of order.
I am not out of
Yes, you are.
order. Point of order in a meeting. I have a right to make a point
You're
of order at any
interrupting me.
time.
I was speaking. My recommendation and I move, and I don't have to move, and it's not going to be a motion. I do not believe Mr. Schwab, but at this point in time, I'm calling for the community to submit letters of interest to the district for the open school board position. And with that, I'm calling for a recess until we receive such letters, and a meeting will be held at a later date to make a determination on how we move forward with our 9th member.
What happened to
Now-
the motion that Dave brought forward?
Okay, well, we can vote on it if you'd like to do it now, or you'd like to do it later, because what
I-
I'm
actually-
giving Mr. Bell the opportunity to put more information together so the board can make a better decision.
Actually, Larry does not have a right to make a recess because he doesn't like the way it's going. Because this is a board of 9 people, 8 currently. So that's not really the case. What we want to look at is whether or not a person inside this audience has a right to provide information to a board prior to making a decision. I'd like to call up Mr. Rossi and let's hear what he has to say.
You make the decision.
I am calling for letters of interest to be submitted to the district by December 20th.
You think all the arguing would be, you've wasted more time than you would have taken to listen to them.
I agree. The people spoken, you can only impress them so far, Larry. You gotta let the people speak. They have 2 people you're looking at. You're looking at Larry, you're looking at Mr. Dwayne Item, and you're looking at Mr. Richard Bells. You can either do one or 2 things. You can
How
either
do we
look
know
at,
there's not others?
I'm sorry?
How do we know there's not others expressing interest?
I can't hear that. Say that again.
How do we know there are not others who would express interest?
Don't care.
You don't care?
Not at all.
You don't care.
I do
I
not
care.
care whether
I
others
care.
express interest when I have a district full of voters that have made a decision, and we should honor that decision. The people have spoken, they should be listened to, Larry. That's the point of this board, to be representative of the people that have spoken. If you're going to oppress them from speaking, if you're going to oppress them from speaking, you're going to have to do it in public, which is what you're doing now, in a board of 9 people. Now, rather than oppress the gentleman that is here, that has the most votes, as you honored, was important, let's hear him, and then let's discuss, then you can put that on hold, and you can discuss Dwayne Item, and then listen to both and make a decision. I'm fine with that. I'll respect that concept. Mr. Rossi, as a board member, I'd like to hear what you have to say.
No.
I can.
So would I.
You can let him speak. There's nothing
Have at it.
against it.
Have at it. Mr. Rossi?
I respect that, and I appreciate it. Thank you for recognizing the Robert's Rules of Order and how they work. Thank
Mr.
you.
Rossi, what district do you represent, where do you live?
I'm a resident of Hempfield School District in Lancaster County.
Up to you.
We'll give you 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to point out, this board had a recent experience with the untimely death of Mr. Hill. And the judge articulated quite clearly that the judge does not want to be placed in a position of imposing his view or his selection on a school board. That it is a job of the school board to make a decision. And through that, obviously judges, the primary consideration is the most qualified person for the job is the person that the judge is going to select. And if there are more than one candidate that are appropriately qualified, judges across the Commonwealth have begun to look at those qualified candidates that are petitioning the court who have actually entered the political arena and have significant community support and electoral support. And I think the board needs to take cognizance of the fact that Mr. Belts, having garnered 1,274 votes, more than even more votes than even some of the candidates on the 4-year ballot, that his unease in picking a candidate will default back to the qualified candidates who have put themselves forward and have garnered substantial support in the community in the electoral process. And that is clearly Mr. Belts. Mr. Belts is clearly qualified. He is a retired airline pilot. I can't imagine why you wouldn't want somebody with a level head, the skill set of an airline pilot sitting on your board to help you guys through some very difficult decisions, apparently, which is dividing this community. And a community which has spoken in the recent election. He is clearly of a demeanor that can facilitate and help this board get to the point, get to the decisions that they need to get to, and add his substantial management skills to this board, which I think any school board should desire to have on their board moving forward. And I think Judge Nanovic, when he appointed Mr. Hill, the replacement for Mr. Hill, expressed deep discomfort in making this decision. He essentially admonished his school board that you really need to make this decision. And if I highly suspect that if he's forced to make this decision again in such a short period of time, he's not going to be particularly pleased. And I think we are going to make the argument moving forward that he should look to what other common pleas judges have done across the Commonwealth, in Lancaster County, in Chester County, in Allegheny County, by selecting qualified candidates who have put themselves forward in the prior election and really default to what the voters wanted and the next best option down ballot. And that would be Mr. Belts in this situation. So I would encourage the board to essentially perhaps vote in a manner which I think you're going to put Judge Nanovic in the position of having to do himself. Now, I would also suggest that the prior board's attempt to reach out to the judge before this meeting has taken place was inappropriate. And I think any kind of discussions with the judge before litigation, before something has taken place,
Stop right there. There have been no discussions.
He's speaking.
I don't care.
No, that's okay.
Now, you're saying that there's been discussions with the judge. There have been no discussions.
Very good. That's good to hear, and I appreciate it.
And it wouldn't be discussions. I didn't take a position with Mr. Hill as well. I was there for the board to answer general board questions. But there has been no discussions.
That's excellent, and that's the appropriate way to move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that being said, is there anyone else here in the audience that would like to make a statement against Mr. Belts being a qualified candidate at all? Is there anybody here that can please help these 4 guys that don't want to elect him and say why Mr. Belts is not a qualified candidate? Even Wayne, can you, Larry, can you make a statement against Mr. Belts that makes him not qualified?
He's called for a vote.
Mr.
I want to hear
Wright
it.
is also
Your discussion.
and as I looked down the tallies here, Mr. Item had accumulated 1,535 votes in the general election. I don't know if you'd like to say any words as well.
I think we should do one at a time and then discuss Mr. Item. We have a whole list of things I'd like to discuss about Mr. Item before we go down the path. However, currently I'm going to ask this board Steve, can you name one thing that says Richard Belts is not
Call for a
qualified?
roll call vote, Mr.
I'm having a discussion
We're not having
before.
discussion, so we're call for a roll call vote.
You're discussing the motion prior to making a vote. You can't just force a roll call vote when you're still having a discussion, Mr. Stern. Why can you do that, Mr. Stern? Where in Robert's rules does it say you can call a vote while we're still having a discussion to collect data? Would you like me to pull it up for you? Wait, you can't gavel me out. I'm a board member. You have a motion on the floor. You're having a discussion. If there's other information pertinent to the discussion, you should address it and then call the vote, Mr. Stern.
Mr. Stern, if I may, again, we've heard one candidate.
One
There are
candidate.
others.
There are others.
Who may have interest in this position. And again, in fairness to everyone, before there is a vote taken, I think it's, in all fairness, that we, again, as you had stated,
We'll give up for letters of interest.
and keep it open for all candidates.
Right.
I believe that's a fair way to do it for the citizens that we represent. Again, to give everyone a fair opportunity in this position.
Andrew, I greatly respect your idea, but the reality is, if you have a motion on the floor and a second, you then have a discussion, and then any one of the board members can make a roll call vote after the discussion of the board members is complete. Prior to that, it would be out of order for you to make that such a suggestion. So, as part of this discussion, Wayne, do you have anything against Mr. Belts that would not let you vote for him?
I believe the discussion would continue at that point. If
Correct.
we do open this up to other candidates, we want the
Well,
quality
we're
of discussion
force
here.
an issue.
If you want to make Dwayne Item part of this discussion, I can respect that.
I did. There is a call for a roll call vote, so we can either.
We're not done with discussion, you can't have a roll call vote if people are still discussing. And if we're asking
There
for
was no
Andrew,
interrupting, you interrupted.
Andrew just mentioned he'd like to hear from Dwayne Item. If we want to put him as part of the discussion, that's part of the...
The chair controls the meeting, Mr. Bradley.
Robert's Rules of Order control this meeting.
We are not a Robert's Rule of Order. If you look at our policy, we don't follow it. The Robert's-
Wait, you're telling me that the school board association that Larry Stern just told us was part of the governance is not going to follow Robert's Rules of Order, which they talked about?
What I'm saying to you, Mr. Bradley, is the policy of this district is to use the Robert's Rules of Order as a guide. It's not binding on us, and we've modified it many times over 30 years. Ultimately, you can't filibuster forever, making a discussion and keeping a discussion when there's a call for a vote. The practice and policy of this district is when the call for a vote is made, that terminates the discussion. You can ask for reconsideration after that.
Put a 3-minute timer on it, let's go through the discussion and we'll end it. Wayne, do you have anything against Richard Belts that prevents you from voting for this man? Steve, do you have anything against this?
We can do one of two ways. We can vote at this point in time and consider Mr. Belt, or we can wait for other candidates and he can have time to put his information together in a more timely manner, maybe more succinctly, and he might be able to express himself a little bit better. Or we can vote, and he can still express his letter of interest later. It's up to
More
you.
succinctly than the 3 minutes you gave him?
I gave
How much more
him more than that, and he didn't give me any details.
Very generous of you. Steve, do you have anything that you said you can't vote for this man? I want to hear it. I want to know anyone in this room, prior to just silencing the whole crowd, who says Richard Belts is not qualified by any means not to accept this seat on this board?
I believe Dwayne Item is more qualified because he's the previous board member.
And I believe if you'd like to have that conversation, and I agree, thank you, let's talk about his experience, which I...
Roll call vote, please, Mr. Bradley, please suspend.
He offered a discussion about this. I'd love to share some
I'd like you to
ways.
show more respect than even the community. I know it's difficult for you to stop talking at certain points.
Especially when I'm being silenced by a man with a gavel that doesn't follow Robert's Rules of Order. I can respect that.
Okay, so there's a motion by Mr. Bradley, second by Mrs. Mahalik to fill the vacancy with Richard D. Belts. Mr. Stephen Holland?
No.
Mrs. Gail Mahalik?
Yes.
Mr. Larry Stern?
No.
Mr. Wayne Wentz?
No.
Mr. Andrew Yancer?
No.
Mr. Richard R. Belts?
Yes.
Ms. Joy Beers?
Yes.
Mr. David F. Bradley?
Yes.
It's 4-4. Motion not carried, doesn't carry.
As stated previously, I am opening the position to accept letters of interest from the community by the December 20th timeline, and until then, we will go into recess. Thank you.
I have other new business. Mr. Stern, before you go to recess, you have to actually ask everybody to have a vote.
No, you
So
don't,
you-
Mr. Bradley.
You cannot go to recess, you have other new business.
An adjournment? Adjournment?
It's not adjournment, we're talking a recess.
He said a recess.
Until when?
I, that he.
You mean 5 minutes, he's got to take a leave? What are we talking about?
Oh, it could be.
Well, you're recessing for what? We have other business to handle here this evening.
There is nothing else on the agenda.
There is new business on the agenda. We were given information to be able to address on this new agenda, and it was not placed on the agenda by the new board members.
The board
So I'm wondering why it wasn't placed on it.
If the policy of this district that has been adopted, the agenda is done by your superintendent and the board president. They are the two responsible for the agenda.
Bill, you know that any board member can make a motion at any time, and it can be added to this board minutes. And it's time to do that. We have a board, we have a room full of people, and we got some business to take care of. I don't understand why you're in such a rush. It's not even 8 o'clock.
You'll have to set up a meeting and advertise it.
We'll set a meeting for
I have-
December 21st to review letters of interest for the school board opening.
Do we have it, can we do it by 3 p.m. on closing? On December 20th?
Yes.
And what we will do, we will, then as we have in the past, we will forward all the letters of interest that we received to the board so they can view them prior to the meetings for December 21st.
Madam Recording Secretary, just so the minutes are accurate, the chair has called a recess of this meeting to the 21st. I assume 7 p.m. to review all documents and to fill the position. Do you have,
Mr. Schwab, I'd like to file a formal protest against Mr. Stern's ability to silence members of this board.
that's your privilege? Recess, I believe.
Yep, we adjourn. We recess.
Recess.
12:21, 7 p.m. The board will receive information as it is supplied to the district concerning applicants for the vacant position.
Yep, and that will also be advertised.